Hello everybody and welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'm Charles Quick and I'm Curator of In-Services, an artistic research project at the University of Central Lancashire. Throughout the autumn, we're inviting people to rethink the way that their neighbourhoods are planned through a series of creative infrastructure labs led by the artists Julia Heslop, Emily Speed and Gavin Renshaw. This is a programme of online and on-the-ground activities aimed at local people and decision makers in Preston's City Deal areas, as well as anyone with an interest in building livable places. We're broadcasting live on YouTube today, so if you'd like to contribute to the conversation or have any questions, please use the comments section of YouTube. We will try and address them towards the end of the discussion. I'd like to thank everybody who's been involved in organising the event, the artists, guest speakers and the team at In Certain Places for making it possible. So finally, I'd like to invite the artist Emily Speed and a guest to join us. She's going to talk about how can we shift the way we use the space between the buildings. Hi Emily.
Hey, thanks Charles. So everyone's coming in now. Thanks very much for having us and for organising this. I'm really happy tonight to have three women who I think are doing fantastic work and I've learned a lot from. So we've got Akiko Kobayashi and Anna Francis and Rebecca Davis of the Portland In Project. So I'm just going to introduce a little bit around why we're here, what I've been doing and how this conversation came about. So I'm very fortunate to have worked with In Certain Places before and on the Expanded City project, which was 3 years ago now. I worked on a project which was around play and thinking about where people are playing, looking at how playgrounds didn't always function that well or weren't that conducive to play for a lot of kids, and the places where people were playing and what play even means really. So the project that I ended up doing was called Model Village with a question mark, and there was a kind of sorry, bear with me. No, sorry Charles, my presentation has gone.
Hi Emily.
Sorry, my presentation's disappeared.
How about just scrolling it?
Okay, I can't believe I'm the person who has done that. Oh, it's gone.
Ben, have you got any suggestions?
Is it possible for Charles to leave them on for you?
No.
No.
So, well, I'm going to try and open it and carry on talking because we are short on time and we've got it right. I think something just disconnected somehow. No, I can't. I'm sorry. Can you control it for me, please, Charles? Or
no, I can't. No, I can only bring it in and out. You have to make the slides move.
So sad. Could we possibly hand over to Akiko or Portland In?
We'll
fix this.
Yeah.
And then come back to yours.
Sorry, guys.
Some fixing. Shall I launch in then, Emily?
Are you okay, Akiko? Thank you for saving me.
Yeah. I am going to also split screen as well and see if I can see. Okay, so mine seems to be moving fine. Hello, everyone who might be out there. I've collected together some general thoughts under the title nurturing a culture of agency. So what I want to talk about is going to be a little bit more of an overview rather than specific things to do with community activism in local neighbourhoods, which I think the next project that we hear about will be more about. So as an architect, I thought I'd like to share with you a little bit of what I do, well, more how I do it. I think maybe some people have fixed ideas of what architects do. It's not just designing and drawing. Through many years of my practice, I've kind of honed a specific way of engaging with people. So I'm going to talk a little bit about one-to-one engagement with people in terms of designing. This is all about getting buy-in and feeling, making building occupants feel like they understand what's being designed for them. And then I'll talk a little bit about supervising builds and construction projects as well. And I've just collected together some vignettes of some things that I've been up to recently. This was actually last week when I had a new client come in who wants to build a tiny house, and we were talking, and we had the site drawing, and we had photos. And then I thought, I wonder how big this thing is that's in his head. And this is a room that's down the corridor from my studio. So we went for a wander and peeked in some rooms and things. And we found this room, which I thought, well, this is 15 square meters. This is what I thought he was talking about. We went in. I lay down, pretending to be in a bed in the corner. He was in the other corner, pretending to be at the kitchenette. And he said, but it would be much bigger than this, wouldn't it? And I'm glad I did that the first time I met him before actually going ahead and designing other things. So I use existing spaces quite a lot. For me, for designing, I'm not really very good at imagining sizes of spaces, so I actually physically have to go into these spaces as well. And if I can get into them with clients through the design process, then that's even better. This is just illustrating a time when a few years ago I was on the NHS Lothian Maternity Services Liaison Committee as the lay member, and I had the privilege of being a kind of design advisor to the midwives who are commissioning a new standalone midwife-led birth centre. Sorry, not standalone, co-located to a labour ward, but in a separate building. And we were having a chat about the birth pools. So all the rooms were going to have their own gorgeous, luxurious birth pools. And we were positioning them on plan, the architect was, and we were talking about how everything fits into the room. And the conversation was, well, you know, this is an awfully big birth pool. How far away does it need to be from the wall? And the midwife explained what she needed to do. I need to get all the way around to reach in to take the fetal heart rate. And obviously the midwife needs to be fairly discreet and inconspicuous when she's doing that as well. And then the next question from the architect was, how much space do you need from the wall to reach in? And people were like, don't know, is it like half a metre? Is it a metre? And I said, maybe we could just measure the midwife. And it's funny, actually, I think there's maybe a bit of a hesitation sometimes to just remember that all these things that we do one-to-one are measurable, and you know, kind of get too fixed on the drawing or the model and the abstract two-dimensional representation of the kinds of activities that we're wanting to accommodate. More recently, this was last month actually, so in a post-COVID situation, I've just worked on a new family centre. It's called the Pregnancy and Parents Centre, and the centre organisers and facilitators were having a session on the weekend to work out how they would get the women in, how many they could have in a class, you know, in terms of their minimum number. And they were just going to go ahead and do this, but I thought I would invite myself along. And we had conversations where we were moving things about, but the best thing was when we found a massive stick that we chopped down to 2 meters, and we had this lovely dance where we could see much more visually. So rather than a tape measure laboriously being pulled in and out or getting tangled up in it, or one person just having the thing and being able to read the number, how close are we to 2 meters? Is it more like, you know, we've got this big stick, someone else can hold the other end of it. It's all very in the space and visual. And I just find that things like that really help conversations like this to flow more smoothly, in terms of everybody being on the same page, everybody understanding the same opportunities and the same constraints, and understanding things from each other's point of view as well. So that's all very well when we've got existing spaces. This is an example of recently where there's an open site. It's going to be a container village, and the contractor doesn't always take the closest look at my drawings, and is not always convinced, I don't think, at what I'm proposing. So I gave him forewarning, and I had a dedicated session with him last week when I said, we're going to go along, we're going to work out what happens at the entrance. And that's his van, actually. It's a long wheelbase high top, which is not too dissimilar to the size of a 20-foot shipping container. And we just spent the whole morning just manoeuvring it, driving it around, saying, popping it there, and then getting out and standing on the face of it and saying, okay, this is how far away this last container is going to be from the entrance, or going to the other side and saying, and this is the distance for the piazza between here and the cafe. And I'm going to go tomorrow and see if the containers got put in those specific places. But I'd like to think that that exercise helped him feel a little bit more comfortable about what was being proposed in the drawing. I'm just going to skip on now to some kind of techniques, I suppose, that I've honed when it comes to actually community builds, and this idea of buy-in, agency within a group dynamic, within a group project. This is a shot from the Wiki House, which we built in the Fountain Bridge area of Edinburgh a few years ago. So the first thing is a briefing, a good briefing, without jargon, without too many bits and pieces, laid out in a logical sequence, nice and clear, so that people get enough of an idea that they know what they're doing, but not too much information that they feel panicked about what's going to happen next. So you do your verbal thing, but then as soon as you can, you get on to getting people engaged and physical. So this is not a specific story. I just really like this photo and wanted to show it to you, because whilst I'm carefully trying to decide on the measurement with the joiner, Neil, I had no idea that the women behind me were just having such a great time there. I think they were waiting for me actually to make a decision about something, and I thought they just made the best of being up there. So I suppose I was the site manager of this build. It was over 3 days, and I had 2 other works managers looking after groups of people on either side. And I felt like my role was just to keep an eye on everything. And that's basically what I did all day, was just to walk slowly around the site, talk to interested people who were on the edge of the site, looking in, asking questions, but kind of just kept going, kept an eye on everything. And I very much was conscious of not interfering when I wasn't needed. I mean, sometimes I could see maybe someone needs a tool next, or you know, they haven't quite got the right thing, and I just go and fetch it, and I just place it near them and say, oh, you know, I'll just pop that there in case it's useful. Or rather than checking in on people saying, are you okay? Is it going okay? I would just leave it open-ended and say, just give me a shout if you need help with the next bit. You know, this bit can be a bit tricky getting that to meet that, but I'll just be around the other side. So just let me know if you need me. So language is obviously a lot of how you create a culture where you're inviting people to find things for themselves, rather than be reliant on the person they think is the expert and is going to tell them what to do, because really you want them to discover for themselves how they want to do something. And I think my last few slides are to do with Woodland Tribe, which is a self-build adventure playground. It's an organisation in itself, and I'm lucky enough to be in the team sometimes. This is from, the picture on the left is from Brighton a few years ago, and the other 2 pictures are from Edinburgh. I think it's maybe the first year we did it in Edinburgh. I love this guy on the right. I don't know if you can see, he's actually got a can of pop in his hand at the same time as well. And this is very much of a hands-off, observing. Maybe a lot of the time I'd just kind of be there with the kids and we wouldn't even talk. I'd just, if something was wobbling a bit, I'd just put my foot on it to stabilize it while they got on with their thing. You know, we don't need to exchange words. They don't need to say thank you. That's not expected. You know, other times as well, I can pretend to be busy sorting something else out off to the side, whilst all the time keeping half an eye on them, I suppose, but, you know, not obviously putting too much pressure on them to do anything in a certain way. And I think the interesting thing with these kinds of projects is when you see the parents interacting with the children. And as you can imagine, some parents are either anxious about the power tools that are being used or just really want to get in there and use the power tool themselves. And sometimes when I see situations like this, I'll just maybe enlist the adult to help me carry something heavy that's on the other side of the site or something, so the kid can have 30 seconds to themselves. Yeah, I guess it's all to do with play. Well, the Woodland Tribe is hopefully a story of transitioning between this kind of play environment and the more formal build that I showed you for the Wiki House. And, you know, we don't tell kids how to play. We're there to help them if they come and ask for our help. I suppose we're there also keeping half an eye out for their safety, but we don't tell them what to do, because what they're going to learn from doing it themselves is so much richer. So those are some general thoughts, and I think maybe if we're ready to move either back to Emily or to the next project, we can come back to any questions about those that anyone might have.
Okay, so thank you very much, Akiko, for saving my bacon as well. I'm now unfrozen, and I'll try and pick up where I left off. So I was saying I'd done a project previously with in certain places around play called Model Village. So this is me and Charles on site, and yeah, this was kind of looking at, it was based on a story home site on a plot where a house was going to be built, and children from all around the area came on coaches. It was incredibly well organised. Thank you, Rachel. And using clay that wasn't fired, they made thought about places in between houses, because that's what was already being built. So thinking about where they might play, where they might hang out, what they would need to be able to do that in the best way possible. And yeah, there was some really beautiful work, and it was a really very hot 3 weeks on the building site. And that's the model village when it was finished from a drone. So that's a tiny project, but also quite a big project. So continuing on from this work in a way, I guess I wanted to, I'm obviously working in the context of Preston and the new city deal. So there's 5,000 new houses being built. I'm really thinking about, as an artist, what I might be able to kind of do in that situation. And for tonight, you know, I was thinking about, like, as Akiko's kind of addressed really beautifully there, the things in between the spaces. And a lot of that's down to the people involved and the kind of community. So I don't always work with other people, but when I do, one of the things I quite often do is try and find like a kind of micro community within the place that I'm working. And one type of group that I come back to quite a lot is dancers. So these amazing ladies are the Ripley Green Garters. So that is Northwest Morris, which is all women in this side. So I was commissioned by Worksworth Festival to make a work, and through a lot of introductions found these Morris dancers, and kind of through working with them to create a piece of work, and there was 5 of them who were willing to kind of go out of the tradition and work with me on a project. We made a piece called The Construction Workers, which was a film, but through them I really discovered the place in a much more deep and kind of through the relationships they had with people in the place. That's them using my props, which they which were substituted for their flowers. So yeah, there's kind of groups that are often based on a shared interest or a shared need, perhaps. So when I was working up in Preston the first time, a lot of my was through mother and toddler groups, because I had a very small son at the time. So another group of dancers, just to show you a few like slices of projects to give you an idea of ways that work is manifested from working with certain communities. This was commissioned by Look Again Festival and City Moves in Aberdeen. So I work around the city centre. I was really drawn to the civic buildings, and they're so imposing in the middle of the city. So there was a call put out for young women who were interested in moving, basically, not necessarily dancers. There's 13 people in the project, and they're aged between 14 and 24. So there's this kind of really interesting age of growing up and very like important friendships. And actually, like, this group by the end of the project was a really amazingly tight-knit group. So there's let me just show you a few of them. So this is them kind of in the final performance that we made in the city centre. And I was really interested in the gestures that spoke about caring for each other, tenderness, that kind of intimacy that you get when you are in those kind of relationships, and bringing out that really subtle stuff into the public sphere. So under the town hall, and they create this kind of really nice pack a lot of the way through the performance. So there's one more project I'll just talk about a little. It's a bit more complex, so I'll just tell you about it as quickly as I can. This is Bootle Library in Merseyside. So I was invited by Maria Brewster, who I think makes really incredible work. She invited me to work in the library, but the invitation was kind of given with the knowledge that she was really interested in how, when you're 9 years old, you can go to the library on your own and you can get your own library card. And it also happens to be the age at which girls have the most confidence, and it kind of goes down after that. So that was really interesting to me, that 9 is that point. So this is the library, the kids' bit of the library as it was. It's kind of a storage area as well. So the really lovely thing about this project for me was that it allowed me to do that kind of thing that artists can be really good at when they're like weaving or joining lots of people and organisations together. So Bootle Library was obviously the main thing. We had a group from the local primary school, so that was the age group where kids were 9 that we took that class. And every week they came in a little crocodile. They walked between the school and the library, and they came and did Possibilities Club, which was what we called it. So Possibilities Club was an invitation to like poet, writer, dancers, an engineer, sculptor, me. Lots of people doing workshops, and kind of in a way, inviting all those people in was sharing all those skills, but allowing me to observe as well, and not to be such an active participant in those at that point. So I could really step back and kind of look at what was happening. And there was a summer club. This went on for about 18 months, the whole project. So it was a really involved project. A summer club where obviously different families and different kids came. And at the end there was a performance, and that's the Poets Workshop, I think. So there's a performance, and then also the library kind of got redesigned, and I was able to do some painting, furniture, new upholstery by Bluebird Upholstery, amazing. And there was this other piece which kind of came out of the knowledge from mums that who had slightly older children, that when they wanted to read with the older child, the toddler, or if they had a very small kid who was moving, it would be really difficult to look after both kids. So this, you can't see the seat on it, but you could kind of pull these pegs out, put the child in it, sit on a seat, kind of all be on it at once. And that was made by Play Workshop, who make really, really beautiful pieces. So there was kind of this outcome, and then also Bootle Tool. I can't say that, Bootle Tool Shed, which is sort of part of the men's shared association, but Eddie, who runs it, is a diamond, and he is just really open to anyone. Women go there as well. And I really hoped that they would build the furniture for the project, but in the end they were just so busy with their own stuff that it didn't work out. But we built them a bespoke window display for all the stuff they made. And afterwards there was a kind of relationship then between the Bootle Tool Shed, the school, the library, and it's like talk of kind of running wood workshops and things like that, and hopefully just opening up those channels a bit so that they could all share their skills. So yeah, the in-between space here, I guess, a bit like with the other projects, you know, it's not, even though this was in a building, it was really about all those relationships around the project and kind of making those links between things. And I would say that with this project as well, and especially with the young women and the girls in the other project, I really was trying to concentrate on autonomy so that people felt confident and really thought about the interdependence in those projects and being able to trust each other, and kind of really see that they didn't have to accept necessarily what was offered to them within a space, but they could also build their own possibilities, and that they could make up their own ideas, their own structures, whether that's physical or social or kind of conceptual. And yeah, just kind of open up all these things and try and be there, learning from them as well, but also being a kind of facilitator rather than rather than trying to tell them what to do. So there is, you know, that kind of stepping back and trying to just put things together a little bit. So yeah, the end of my talk was going to be an introduction to the other speakers, but you know, Akiko, you can't have that now. But yeah, I will just say that next we have Anna Francis and Rebecca Davis. So I'm going to turn my mic off and hand over to them.
Thanks, Emily. Yeah, so I'm Rebecca and I'm Anna, and we run the Portland In project here in Stoke-on-Trent. So we're going to talk specifically about one project and really try to sort of delve into that a little bit around how we operate as a project within the space between buildings. So to give a bit of background, I'm an artist who's based in Stoke-on-Trent, and I have lived here most of the time since the late 90s. But my work since around 2007 has, I think our presentation is frozen as well. So we'll just, I'll just talk, and then hopefully while I'm talking, Rebecca might be able to.
I might have to just manually do that.
So can you see that, everyone else?
Oh, there we go.
Oh,
now it works for it. Okay.
So since 2007, I've been making work in Stoke-on-Trent, which really responds to the city as it has been. A lot of change has been going on in Stoke for many, many years, but since 2007, there's been quite a lot of regeneration projects that have happened. And I think, like a lot of artists, I'm very influenced by what's happening around me. So I think in the beginning, I was sort of documenting what's happening in the city, and then began to think about what my role might be within this change. And so have worked on lots of projects which kind of sort of tested you know, how I might live as an artist here, and sort of looked at some of the regeneration projects and kind of assimilated some of the language, and also tested out some thoughts about the role of the artist more generally. Back in 2013, the City Council announced a project which was sort of responding to the failed Pathfinder, which happened here, which was a big housing renewal project, which meant lots of areas of the city were being demolished. And their response to that, I've been making work sort of looking at these opening up spaces around the city. Their response to that was the £1 home scheme. They wanted to sort of regenerate this area of the city that was really sort of run down, and because of that housing renewal scheme that collapsed, and by inviting people to apply to be a £1 homeowner. There was a sort of clause which said that you had to be a sort of really engaged community member and support community development. And I was really interested to think about what an artist might do in that context. And I guess at that time in my life also, I'd become pregnant, and my partner and I were thinking about, you know, how can we make a more solid home for our family, but also how can we start to kind of give something back and really become part of a community as well. As an artist, I'd been working on lots of quite short-term projects, and I was quite frustrated by how that energy, that amazing kind of energy that you can build up when working in a context, just sort of dissipates and disappears when the project ends. So I was very interested actually in thinking about how my life as an artist might be more sustainable if I began to live where I work. So we were really lucky to get a £1 house, and so I started a project very soon after moving in to sort of think about these buildings that had been renovated via the £1 home scheme. You know, these are just the buildings. What else is needed to make a successful community? And so, yeah, my project really looked at that. Initially, it was a ceramics project, but very quickly it became about the need for the community to have a building, or at least some kind of space to get together, because the shop, the pub and the community centre were all empty and boarded up.
So it was sort of... okay, so yeah, I moved to Stoke in 2016, and I moved from London, and I'm originally brought up in Elephant and Castle in southeast London, and I, prior to moving to Stoke, had been working for a long time in Elephant on a project called People's Bureau, and really it was a result of lots of us feeling quite frustrated with regeneration processes not being representative of the people that lived and worked in Elephant, and through that frustration kind of joined forces with other artists and community groups to create a space that did represent our locality, and was also about sort of championing the small businesses and the small exchanges, the socialising, the play, the people that you meet in the spaces between the shops, I guess, because the shopping centre is about making the most of all of those spaces. And then sort of from that project kind of started a touring project that mobilised those conversations around how we come together and why it's not always easy. And we toured to Preston, actually, Hull and Portland Street in Stoke-on-Trent. And really that was about sort of creating a space for a committee of locals who would then sort of draw up a programme that they felt like represented local needs and interests. And it's run by a bar lady that I play in each different place, but maybe we'll talk a bit about that later. So yeah, Portland Street, and lots of the conversations there were around exactly what Anna's project had also sort of realised, lack of space for people to sort of come together, even though the pound housing scheme had been introduced to this area. And so there was an influx of new residents in quite a long-standing sort of existing community.
Yeah. So very quickly, both of our projects established with the people that we were working with locally that there was this need, a really well-articulated need for a space. And because of that, and our conversations with the council, we were offered, first of all, the empty shop, and then because it was quite small, they offered us the empty pub to test out whether or not the community really did want a space. So back in 2016, we managed to make the really quite derelict pub just about habitable in order to run a programme. And we tested out 53 different activities over a month. And
well remembered, 53.
Yeah. And all different times of day. And we just really wanted to see, like, if we took over this space as a community, what would it look like? What kind of activity would happen there? Who would be involved? And how could this develop? And so over the programme, we were, doing all of these activities, but really we were asking a lot of questions. And one of the main questions was one which actually, at the end of the programme, one of the community members decided to take it into his own hands and do his own community consultation. And he went around the street asking people whether or not they wanted the pub forever. And the answer was yes, apart from 3 people who said no. So since then, we've been working on this project to try and make that happen. And so, yeah, we have a focus on the building, but obviously after 2016, the pub was already derelict and the hole in the roof meant that we couldn't be in the space. And so we've been continuing to operate as the Portland Inn Project, advocating to get this building for the community. Basically we've been operating from the spaces in between since 2016. This picture's from 2018 though, where we worked with Baxendale on a co-build. So this was we were interested in kind of creating a space that represented the exact dimensions of the workshop space that we wanted in the pub building. At this point in 2018, the pub building was inaccessible and dangerous. And so we were kind of wanting a space that felt a little bit more solid. And this was also where we were really testing out the sort of how people could be involved in the future design of the pub building as well. So we had a architecture summer school with our architect Godson Egbo. And we were sort of testing out lots of things that we'd hope to be a kind of full-term program. But again, we were quite focused still in 2018, I think, on the pub building and sorting that out. So although we had all of these really exciting activities that brought everyone together and it was all about learning and really generating ideas around the future of the building, we were still very focused on the building, I think, weren't we? Yeah, so it was 2018 that the council finally agreed the asset transfer, so that the pub would kind of come into community ownership on a long-term lease for 25 years. And at that point, we started to work on the architectural plan and involving people in that. And raising the roof was the kind of project around that. Really, it was about the building, but it was also about sort of changing the rhetoric of Portland Street, because the area is known sort of in Stoke-on-Trent as the place that you don't want to go, or you do want to go if you want to get your drugs. And so for us, it was very much about this being a very different story, sort of locally, but also nationally, that actually our community could be known for something positive, because in fact, the people kind of the negative stigma is not about the people who live there. It's about some of the kind of activity that happens in the background.
And also, as we know, I guess when you sort of live and work in a place that's constantly got a bad rep, you start to believe it. And that's not okay. And so we were excited about championing the good bits of this area, the good bits of why it's good to sort of live there as well. So yeah.
And so it's great to sort of get the project sort of out of Stoke-on-Trent and heard about outside. And it's really interesting for our community as well to sort of know that actually this tiny place is being recognised.
So this was in 2019. We found out we got Creative Civic Change funding. This was really important because this funding, which supports us for 3 years, helped us refocus and kind of shift our energies and priorities over to strengthening our organisation.
Yeah.
So whilst the building is constantly going on and sort of all, negotiating the planning for that and whatnot, actually we're really getting good at building our team and the programme, and also the skills that can be learned as part of our programme as well. So not just kind of, so ceramics is a really big part of it because we're sort of sat on an abundance of clay and because it's a big part of people's heritage here, but also it's kind of a really great way of kind of getting to sitting down and having conversation and sculpting something at the same time. And there's also lots of kind of skills to be learned in community organising as well that can kind of surround that. And that's really what our programme's kind of building on.
But I think all of the things that we focus on around sort of skill development, they always have a practical purpose back into the street and into the building. And whether or not we're working on, you know, architectural features that will eventually go on the pub building, or whether we're working within our temporary space to kind of change how the area looks right now, everything we do has a very sort of practical application, so that actually the community who've been through quite a difficult time and who have actually felt quite failed by very long-winded regeneration processes can see change and transformation happening really quickly and by their own hands.
Exactly. So this music video, for instance, was made in response to the environmental issues in the area. So whilst this project was about sort of learning skills in lyric writing and making music and videoing the music video, it was also about addressing those issues in the area. So again, trying to sort of create a counter narrative as well at the same time for the area. Very quickly, because obviously, you know, we're still going, sort of, our project is about connecting and coming together, and obviously COVID has created sort of issues around how to negotiate that and how to create space and connect during this time. So there's been lots of ways that we've sort of done that over the last few months, like creative packs and a new newsletter to sort of better link residents with local services. But really it's kind of the doorstep conversations that we've been having with families around fears around the attainment gap that they fear that their children would have going back to school. And so I guess whilst COVID's been really tricky to sort of work around, it's been a really amazing sort of learning curve for us to recognise how responsive we are to giant challenges and how we're able to act quite quickly in response to local needs. So yeah, I think.
Yeah, even down to, you know, suddenly we've been able to operate previously from, you know, different, getting more and more solid structures. But really with COVID, we really needed to be able to wash our hands, for example. So suddenly the need for a working sink becomes urgent, and we're able to respond to that as an organisation working from the spaces, you know, that perhaps the community can find and occupy. And that's probably all we will say for now.
Oh yeah, but just because time's run out. But yeah, so this is the building that we're sort of working towards. But also in response to a really interesting discussion we had prior to this talk, was Akiko, you're talking about the loose fit architecture, and it's just got Anna and I thinking loads about sort of our work as a community-based organisation, and you know, sort of how we're able to sort of be loose and elastic and moving. And maybe this is quite a good segue into sort of open our discussion now about
definitely
around that.
Yeah, so we loved the notion of a loose fit architecture, and it's definitely the ethos that we have for the building that we're working towards. But because I really remember my mum saying, like, you know, you'll grow into it, about like massive jumpers that would be knitted. And actually, that's how we want to think about the way that we are developing this building and this project, that, you know, this is for the community to grow into this space and to kind of, for it to have that space for the community. Yeah. So thanks for that thought last week, Akiko. It was really great.
Cheers, guys. Well, I think we can go to 5 past because of my clunking everything up. So we've got about 20 minutes, and there's a couple of questions. If you're signed into YouTube, you're able to write a question in the comments on there. I've got a couple of DMs and there's a few here, but if there's anything that really like speaks to either of you that you would like to talk about, I'll invite you to choose first. Otherwise, I'm really happy to.
We'll probably have to close something.
Yeah, we'll
okay.
Yeah, screen.
Yeah. Don't worry. I will tell you the questions. So we've got a few, and I guess one of them is is maybe, I was going to say maybe quick to answer, but maybe that's not true. So what and where are the places you describe as in between? And I guess, you know, very quickly, I'll just say it's, for me, it's probably the people and the community that exists in between physical buildings. But you guys might have a different answer to that.
I would say the places in between for me are in the process. So I think the obvious thing for me to say would be within a cityscape in between buildings and things. But I think what I was trying to illustrate was the soft stuff that people I work with don't even realise that I'm doing. It might sound a bit manipulative, or it might just sound like a kind of a previously undefined or undeclared way of working. And I think it's in between the things that people expect to get from an architect. So a design solution and drawing and stuff that you can cost.
I think what you were
that's
saying about and Emily actually about sort of bringing people together and connecting people. I know for me, over the years, my work has been really interested in the gaps and the bits of the city that perhaps are being overlooked by other people, but that there is a lot of resource and I find really interesting. And I think down on Portland Street, because there had been quite a lot of, I don't know, it's sort of been left to get on with it for a long time. We found that there was a lot of space actually for people to have more agency and to be able to kind of push for, even if it's just temporarily, the things that they want to see happen.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's also space is time. So it's really interesting, Akiko, to hear about. And the other day you were saying this, you were kind of relating it to like parenting, having one eye on the action and being sort of in deep in whatever's being built, just like you were just describing in your talk as well. But having another eye on maybe the people that are passing and are kind of engaging with it, but not sure how to communicate. So you're there to communicate with them and have a chat. And I think that for me, that time is the space. And also for us as artists, creating space where, yeah, we're not delivering the workshop, where we're sort of stood back and we've got trust in whoever is delivering the workshop, but we're able to chat with the mums about what's going on the street, or
that kind of listening. We sort of realised that quite recently, that sometimes the activity is a bit distracting, and actually that's not the work. Like having this workshop for us isn't the work. It's actually those conversations that we have with the community where we really get to hear what's going on and how people are feeling about it. And that for us is where the work is. And so we're trying to be a bit more mindful about not overfilling those gaps or that space, and kind of you know, allowing, I think, you know, definitely you know, allowing people to fill that space themselves, so that we're not as artists taking over all of that space.
Yeah. And then I think this one's kind of directed at the Portland Inn, but you know, it does apply to everyone in a way. So what are the benefits of collaborating outdoors rather than indoors?
right now we have to. Yeah,
there's a few downsides to that as well, isn't there? But
we've sort of thrown into that, which is fine. But I guess we're quite lucky that there's a green space in front of that pub building, you know. And like Anna says, there's then all these other in-between spaces where, you know, like the brownfield site just down the road, and also the neighbourhood is a place where the kids do still play actually on the street. So when Godson, our architect, the last few times he's come, the kids are sort of playing football and stuff. So like for me, there's loads of benefits in being outdoors.
But I think, I mean, obviously we're working towards having a building where we can be indoors as well. But I think a lot of our stuff will still happen there on the green, because it is a space which is quite neutral. And so people don't think, oh, it belongs to those people, or, you know, it is a space which everyone walks through, and it's the way up to town. And so you know, so we have the people who come intentionally, and then we have the people who are just passing. And
it's not just that it's neutral; it's that it belongs to everybody, doesn't it?
yeah, yeah, that's
And
right.
you can see it. You can see something happening, whereas you might never find out if it was, you know, tucked away in a building.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's another thing, is that we find that with lots of visibility outside, then there's less antisocial activity as well, because the kids feel safer to play outside and stuff. And so that's another reason why it's good to be outside. But yeah.
But that also can be challenging as well because of that, because you are a little bit open to the elements, and some of those elements are really challenging.
Yeah.
I guess that makes me think about something we talk about a lot in architecture, which is thresholds. So if you're outside, you don't have that stickiness or friction of a threshold that you might have once you're inside your building. So it'd be interesting to see how you deal with the front door, how you deal with visibility through the windows. And I'm about to start teaching new students this week, and thresholds is the big thing that we'll be talking about.
It's a really interesting point, because I mean, right early on when we were in the pub, we talked about, like, when is it okay for us to close the door? If this is a sort of public building and it's, you know, the community's building, when can we say, actually, we need some time, you know, so we're shutting the door? And so, yeah, that's an open question still, because obviously we're not in the building yet, and all the activity that happens on the street, as you said, we don't have a door currently. So it's like, how do you manage those moments when we haven't started yet? And it's just by sort of telling people, you know, with 5 minutes, and, you know, the kids are there right on time as soon as activity begins or before, so they can get involved in setting up then, because, you know, yeah.
That's really nice. Another question. So at what point does working in the artist role become less important than operating as a broker, facilitator, community builder? Is it inevitably intrinsic? And I guess, Akiko, you said something about what people think architects do before, and I wonder if it's the same with artists. Like, do people think they know what artists do, but actually, you know, artists are incredibly sort of flexible and responsive? Not, you know, I'm talking about certain types of artists who work in a certain way, but yeah, do you think there's a kind of hierarchy and importance there, or do you think it's all tied in?
I think with our work, we find that we are shifting role all the time. I think, you know, I think our community probably that we work with don't necessarily think everything that we do is us as artists, you know, and actually quite a lot of what we do probably looks more like community development in some ways. But we've talked about this before, but the artist's role, or, you know, what the artists and what people are expecting of you when you come in as the artist. I think what Akiko was saying, sometimes we can use that to our advantage in some ways, and we can play the fool, and we can kind of ask some questions almost tongue-in-cheek of the council, and you know, we can push a little bit further because we are playing the role of the artist. But it's really interesting for me because I'm also playing the role, or am the role, of community member, and so I can kind of shift, you know, when am I the artist and when am I the community member. And sometimes that can be sort of difficult to kind of even understand myself, which I am.
I think, and I'm not too bothered about not being taken seriously as an individual and as an artist, but I want the work to be taken seriously.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. And Akiko, you said before you were site manager on one of the projects as well as the architect, is that right? So you kind of do this everything role as well?
Yeah, I did the fabrication for that as well, on a CNC machine, and I trained some people up on how to use a CNC machine. So, you know, same as Rebecca and Anna, probably you just do what you got to do to make the project happen, and you don't worry too much about what the definition of your job is. And you know, this role facilitator is something that I use quite a lot I suppose. And can I just, I forgot to read something out quickly. It's just one sentence. I was going to do it at the end, but it just chucks in a few more relevant words. It's from Colin Ward. I mixed up, it's not Colin, it's Colin Ward from the 1976 lecture that he gave at Sheffield Architecture School. And he said, if architects have a professional future at all, it is as skilled understanders, enabling people to work out their problems. So, you know, there's the word enabler there as well, which we use a lot, but I really like the phrase skilled understander, because it's not, that's the thing that comes first, isn't it? And sometimes understanding isn't necessarily about right and wrong, it's about your point of view, but that is the thing that you're trying to do. And I don't think it's necessarily sequential. You understand the situation first and then you help to devise a solution. Obviously, just getting on and doing it is part of the process of starting to understand it, isn't it? A place or a dynamic within a community or whatever it might be.
Skills understander, that's great. And I love his Child in the City book. It's such an amazing document as well. I've got a question by DM here because someone couldn't comment, but it's, do you ever feel limited or does your work feel compromised by a commissioner's agenda? And I guess Paul and Din, you are commissioning yourselves. But yeah, when do you kind of push back and when do you have to stand up for yourselves, I guess? Everyone.
I guess we have funders sometimes. Well, we have funders, so you know, sometimes funders have particular, you know, requirements that you have to meet. But we're really lucky that we're, you know, working with the local trust, and they really do trust what we're doing. So I think we're just in an amazing position as kind of, yeah, as you say, being able to sort of navigate and negotiate ourselves and not really compromise on what we believe and what.
No, and I think, like, you know, having worked across lots of contexts, like galleries, communities, you know, with public services, you know, commissioners, developers, whoever it might be, I just think it's really important to be transparent from the off that, you know, this is our agenda as a community-based organisation and as artists. We have hope that this relationship will, you know, support what we're doing and, you know, represent properly, you know, the community that we're sort of working with. And I think that's really important for us on the Portland In project, and has been throughout our practices, is, you know, that there's sort of all the voices around the table are heard and listened to. And yeah, I feel, and that you do get those, and it feels really exciting for us when there are those individuals at Stoke City Council that are really listening and really do care, because they're then talking to someone that's at the desk opposite them that is in planning or wherever it might be, and are able to kind of shift things and move things in a positive way. But yeah, it's there's a lot of negotiation and partnership involved, and trust, and yeah, honesty, and all those words, but important.
We've got a couple of really interesting questions that have just come in, so I'm going to try and do them both. We've got like 5-6 minutes. Akiko, one is for you, and this is from Helen Stratford, who's also an artist, and she's really interested in your facilitator, architect or parent, and how that relates ethically to, and how it relates ethically and insurance. So I think that might be to conventional practice models. So there's something in there around
liability, maybe.
I think it's more about the kind of the stepping back, perhaps, or
yeah, I might answer the insurance one, because if it's a question from an architect, it's about PII and public liability insurance. And for the Wiki House, the community group arranged the insurance, but for a time when I've used the junk playground alongside as well, and the kids were making signage to put up, and they had to drill the holes themselves. I just spoke to my insurance broker, and I described what was happening, and he said it would be much better if they weren't using power tools and just using manual tools. And I said, no, it's going to be impact drilled drivers, and that's what I'd like them to learn, and it's going to be really fun for them, and know how to keep it safe and keep an eye on them. So yes, there are insurers out there. I'm not sure about how it relates ethically. Maybe Emily, Anna and Rebecca can help me think about what that might be. I don't know if it's related to...
I mean, it kind of got me thinking about
manipulation earlier, or what do you think?
Well, maybe go on, Rebecca.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure if this answers it, but I thought it was quite funny when you were talking, Emily, in the last discussion around how we operate between the official space, there's my hand, and the unofficial, and we're sort of in between. And so, I don't know, in the past I've worried so much about sort of insurance and things like that, and kind of safety and whatnot. But I think generally if everyone's aware of what they're getting themselves involved in, I guess it also comes down to trust again, doesn't it? And sort of...
and risk as well, like how much risk you allow, and yeah, maybe how things are in terms of the insurance kind of is so embedded in the way we run, or people think that workshops should be run. Maybe, I don't know.
I think maybe, I wonder if the word ethically is operating on this idea of a conventional practice model. Maybe there's the feeling that working in the way that I've defined might somehow be seen as undermining a much more formal role that an architect might be expected to play.
Or enriching it.
I would like to think it's enriching it, and someone else helped me, well, suggested the word, the act demystifying as well.
Making visible your questioning process as well, and that if you're making visible that actually this is a learning process for us as well as the people that we're working with, then you're not framing yourself as the expert perhaps in the room, which I guess isn't the usual with, you know, I guess when we're working, we feel that we're learning as much as everyone else when, you know, when we're doing something. So that for us is quite important, but perhaps not the normal way of doing things. And actually, I guess learning very publicly and sometimes failing very publicly.
But like publicly, kind of, we hosted a discussion that was titled "How to Write a Community Business Plan for People Who've Never Written a Community Business Plan Before." And then we wrote this business plan, and so it was us trying to fit our practice into this thing that we'd never done before. And Stoke City Council said that it was the sort of the most visual business plan I've ever seen.
That sounds great.
To artists, again, it's I don't know.
So Helen, who wrote the question, has replied and said, yes, enriching. I like the idea of keeping an eye out while remaining at a distance. How to be a good parent embraces risk. So she is on the same wavelength. We've got time for one last question with a really succinct answer. No problem. So this is via a DM as well. So the space between is agile, there's perpetual change and evolution. Does this mean nurturing new voices is vital as our agility becomes seasoned and moves to permanency? So like thinking about mentoring and things like that, which for me, certainly with my Boots Library, I was trying to put in place things that would carry on without me, and to have really confident young people coming out of that with ideas of how to do things. So in a very simple way, I would say, you know, absolutely it's about passing things on. I mean, do you guys want to try and answer that? Can you remember it? So about nurturing new voices. And I guess the moving to permanency with you guys in the building is quite you know,
I think again, going back to that giant jumper picture, you know, that everyone can wear at the same time. It's an issue because we've been able to be really responsive and flexible and, you know, quickly adapt to things, people coming and saying one day, you know, this needs to happen, and then we can, within 2 days, it's happening. And we do worry that this building is going to be a really big drain on our resources. And so actually, it is really important that we try to build something which is going to continue to still be able to be responsive and flexible and accommodate the range of voices that this community has, because we know as soon as we've done something, this community is constantly changing all the time, and what they need, and the kids are growing up and getting older, and you know, so the thing that was needed today might not be what is needed tomorrow. And so it's really important that we build in that kind of space.
Yeah. But how on earth can a rigid structure made of bricks and mortar, you know, be the loose fit jumper is, going to be the next.
But we'll do it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Akiko, would you like to add any words to that at all?
Well, I suppose the obvious way that I like to think I'm nurturing new voices is through teaching. So teach first year architecture at Edinburgh Uni. We all practice in different ways, and I don't know if that necessarily comes across in the teaching, but I don't think I can really suppress it. It's not what I teach, it's the way I teach, which you probably get a feel for from how I've explained how I design with other people or how I might get something built with other people. And those things always trickle into projects as well, you know, students and graduates, if they're interested, if they feel drawn towards it.
No, that's great. We're going to have to finish it there, but thank you so much. I really enjoyed that. And there's a few questions that we didn't get to answer, which I have put links to everyone in the comments if you want to kind of look at anyone's practice more, or just go into things a bit further. You can do it that way. But thank you so much, everyone. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being here, you guys. Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Cheers.